Peace be upon you, friends. With you is your friend Darum. I ask you to support the channel by subscribing, liking, and posting motivating comments and an enjoyable viewing experience for you. I headed towards the sound and found a person sitting on the ground who was similar in dress and appearance to my friend with whom I stayed in Jabal al-Akhdar. The person who opened the door for me was standing behind him with a cup in his hand, the contents of which I could not see because it was not transparent. The man standing asked me to sit in front of the other man and said, "Are you ready?" I said to him, "Ready? Why exactly?" He said, "For the final stage of your inauguration?" I said, "Install what? What are you talking about?" The man sitting got angry and shouted at me, saying, "Did you come here to make fun of me?" I shouted at him and said, "Are you crazy?" The man who was standing put the cup on the ground and quickly got me up and took me outside while saying, "What's with you? What do you do?" I shouted at him and said, "What's wrong with you?" He responded with anger and surprise and said, "You complete all the difficult conditions, and when you reach the easy stage, you stop?" I did not understand anything from him, and I told him, "I'm leaving. Looks like I came to the wrong place." Before I left, the man grabbed my arm and said, "They won't let you escape from them so easily. You are one of them now, and the inauguration ceremony must take place." I got away from him and went out and got into my car and returned home to find my brother in a state of fear, telling me that my mother suddenly screamed and then fell to the ground, and they took her to the hospital. I quickly went to the hospital, and the doctor told me that she was in a coma and told me that he did not know the cause of the condition. I quickly entered her and saw signs on her that the doctor had not seen. I had read about them in one of the books in that accursed library, and they all indicated that she had been subjected to demonic touch scent and not chosen, meaning that someone had sent her a demon to tamper with her. So nothing came to my mind except that crazy man and his assistant, so I got into my car. She headed home with the intention of taking revenge. She headed home, and dawn was approaching. I knocked on the door hard, and a man I had never seen before opened it, and I said to him, "Where does he live here?" He said, "I am the one who lives here." So I said to him, "You are a liar." I quarreled with him, and the people who were going to Fajr prayer gathered around us and separated us. So I got into my car and left on my way home. I was driving my car quickly, and in the blink of an eye, my husband appeared with me in the car, and he was sitting in the seat next to the driver, and he said in a loud voice, "Your debt expires today." I was terrified by him and lost control of the steering wheel, and a terrible accident occurred, as a result of which I was taken to the hospital. I did not suffer from any fractures or wounds, even though the car was completely destroyed. The doctor came in, and it was around 6 in the morning. He said that I miraculously survived and will be out of here tomorrow, God willing. My brother visited me in the hospital, and I advised him to place Surat al-Baqarah next to my mother, sleep with her that night, and wipe Zamzam water on her forehead. My brother left, and I slept a little until the afternoon, and when I woke up, I felt very cold, so I asked the nurse to turn off the air conditioning, but nothing changed. I asked her for an additional cover, but that was of no use, so I tried to get out of bed, but I could not because I felt something heavy on my chest, something that almost crushed my ribs and took the weight. It increases gradually. He pinned me completely to the bed. I tried to scream, but something gagged my mouth. I knew then that it was my kinsman whom I had freed, and that he had returned to obtain that debt he was talking about. When the pressure eased about my mouth, after about 5 minutes I was able to move my tongue and said, "What do you want?" No one answered me, so I repeated the phrase, raising my voice each time. Then the pressure on my mouth came back again, and I heard a whisper in my voice in my ear saying, "I want to communicate with you. I want you to respond to them. I want you to see me." I did not understand his words, and he remained close to my chest and began to beat me severely until I fainted. I woke up this morning to the doctor's voice telling me, "What did you do to yourself?" I didn't know what he meant until I saw bandages covering my chest and arms and a bandage wrapped around my head. I slowly got out of bed, and the doctor was trying to catch me as I was slipping away. In the end, I succeeded in leaving the hospital and headed home. I met my brother and told him that I had to travel, so he grabbed me and said, "Never travel again." I told him, "I must travel. Otherwise, I will not forgive myself if something bad happens to my mother." He said, "What does your travel have to do with it?" I told him, "No, just wait for me." I went to the door, and my brother was complaining about me and what would happen to my father, my absence for the second time, and I only answered him with one question when I grabbed the door handle on my way out of the house and said to him, "Are we in fig season?" The 3 years I spent locked in the library, the man with whom I spent 3 years of my life against my will and without my choice, his name was Amar, as he told me later. From the first day I spent with him, I was rebellious and dissatisfied with my situation, especially when I searched for Jen in his books for a long time. I was confined to the place, and he would go out from time to time to bring food. His house was isolated from the city in the middle of green hills. I was always bored and worried about my family's condition after I left. I was very angry with him because he refused to communicate with them and reassure them about me and my condition, but I understood the reason for his fear later. The period I spent with Amar was not simple, and it affected my personality and behavior greatly. And at a later stage, it distanced me from my religion and created a different person out of me. The first minute in Amar's house. That minute was filled with astonishment at his appearance and the appearance of his house, which was simple and consisted of only one floor and did not have many rooms, and its roof was covered with wood, even though the house was made of brick. I did not speak at that minute, but I realized that I had entered a different world, a world completely different from the world I came from, and from that minute on, I had the desire to leave his house. The first hour in Amar's house. This is the moment when Amar gave me the key to my salvation, and at the same moment, he threw it into a deep sea and told me to go and look for it, even though I was not good at swimming. I spent my first hour at his house reading hurriedly to catch my plane before it took off. I did not know at the time that the flight would be delayed a little. When Amar gave me the choice to start with any book, I did not think about the choice specifically. Rather, I extended my hand to the first book I saw, opened it, and began reading it without rest or concentration. I was looking for something I didn't know, so I couldn't find it. I turned the pages, and most of the time I did not understand anything, because those books were talking to the reader as if he knew what the words and symbols meant. So I went to Amar after half an hour of reading and said to him, "I don't understand anything that's written, and I don't think I can finish." He said, "You won't understand anything at first, but continue, and I promise you that you will understand." Closed the book and placed it on the table that was next to Amar. I took a deep breath and said to him, "I cannot." He said, "Do you intend to stay here forever?" I was silent as I looked into his eyes, which were staring at me seriously. Then I said to him, "I cannot." Amar got up from his place, holding the book with his left hand, and with his right hand he grabbed my shoulder, shook me, and said in a stern tone, "You were able to read the book, preparing that devil, and you will be able to find the book that will save you from him." I extended my hand and took the book with my left hand, while saying, "I wish I had not read that book." After that, I got up and went back to the library and continued reading the book. The first day with Amar. I kept reading in the library until the sun set, and I did not feel the time until Ammar entered me just after it had set with a lamp in his hand and said, "Did you find anything?" I told him no, and I didn't understand anything either. He laughed and said, "Stop reading now and come to eat." I said to him, "I cannot. I must find what I am looking for." He said to me, "I do not want you to read at sunset." I said to him, "Why?" He said, "Don't ask me now. I will tell you the reason one day." I got up and went to the living room to find Ammar sitting with one bowl containing a strange mixture that looked like harissa, and he said to me, "Would you like to have dinner with me?" At first, I did not want to eat that food. The food that Ammar brought was strange and did not resemble the food I was accustomed to. When I asked him about the type of food and its source, he told me, "Eat and don't ask." I hesitated at first, but my hunger forced me to taste. I noticed that Ammar did not name and was eating with his left hand, but I did not comment on what I noticed. After finishing the food, Ammar asked me and said, "How did you find the food?" I told him, "It was good." I said this out of taste, but the food was almost tasteless and did not contain salt or any source of taste. But I did not want to be rude to the person who opened his door to me. I went back to reading immediately after eating, although Ammar tried to persuade me to postpone it until tomorrow, but I did not want to waste time, as my flight to the airport was the day after. I entered the library, and it was dark, so I looked for a source of electricity to turn on the lights, but I did not find any, although I remembered that there was a light in the living room when we were eating. I returned to the living room and found Ammar sitting writing in one of his blogs. I looked up to look for the source of light in the room and found it was an oil lamp. I was amazed and asked Ammar, "Don't you have electricity in this house?" Ammar did not respond to my question and continued writing. I repeated the question to him more than once, but he was writing with concentration, as if he was not aware of anything around him. I returned to the library and began searching for the source of light. During my search, Ammar entered me with a lamp in his hand that was not hanging in a room living and said, "Use this flashlight." I said to him, "What happened a while ago? Why didn't you answer me?" Ammar ignored my question and entered the library, holding the lamp in his hand and saying, "Come on, I'll show you something." I followed him and forgot about my question. Ammar sat at the table that was in the middle of the library and placed the lamp in the middle. Then he brought two books and placed them next to each other and said, "Open the two books." I sat next to Ammar and opened the first book and found it similar to the books I had read that day. Then I opened the second book and found it different as it was handwritten. So I said to him, "What do you want to say to me?" He said, "There are two types of books, printed books, which are good books, but they are not rare, and there are several copies of them. But for handwritten books, there is only one copy, or at most two copies in this world. I own 5 of them." I said to him, "Why are you telling me that?" He said, "Do not read handwritten books." I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm not ready for it yet." I said, "But perhaps my salvation lies within its folds." He said, "Don't worry, I know its content, and it does not contain anything that will benefit you." I didn't argue with Ammar much because I wasn't keen on reading more of his books. In fact, I was happy because there were 5 fewer books that I had to read now. After hours of reading under the lamp, Ammar came to me before dawn and said, "You should sleep now." I said to him, "I cannot. I must find what I need." He said, "This is not a request, but an order." I said, "I'm tired anyway. Where will I sleep?"